Hello and welcome back to the podcast. So today I'm going to be chatting here with Kevin Lyons, you're a pretty heavy hitter as far as you said you have some patents in artificial intelligence and machine learning. So I'm sure we're going to dive into all of that. And then specifically what I wanted to root down on is how AI is going to start affecting the roles of analysts in the industry.
Sure.
So how are you? How are you doing today?
I'm very good. How are you today?
I'm doing all right. So Carly was going to be joining us, but Western North Carolina just got wiped out. I mean, they're saying that the hurricane was like a 1 in 1,000 year. Like usually it either goes down one or the other side of the mountain. This went like straight up.
Straight up the middle.
Yeah. But all right. So
it's terrible.
Yeah, it is. But so tell me a little bit more about, I guess, give me kind of like your elevator speech. So like I was introduced to you by Solomon. I guess you guys met during your time in Nielsen?
Yeah, a while ago. And so we've just stayed on, if you will, LinkedIn friends, basically. Keep track
Gotcha.
of each other's career, help each other out when possible.
Yeah. So kind of walk me through, because I think you have a master's degree in medieval history?
My educational background is odd. Um, I'm originally from Buffalo, then moved to the Midwest and went to University of Illinois in basically engineering, and did very well in it. But as anyone that's ever had a math class in college knows, that they don't all do a great job of explaining why you're learning what you're learning. And so it's a challenge. And I, being the first person to ever go to college, basically graduate from college from my family, I thought college was about learning stuff. Like how the human mind works and why we do the things we do, just like learning deep
Yeah.
theories. And I took a course in medieval history, and I quickly realized that so many of the things that in Western world we believe and think and do have origins in medieval history, that I just soaked it up and changed my degree to Russian language and area studies of all things, and studied the medieval Russian church. Then I got a master's degree in medieval history from Ohio State University. I'm ABD in medieval history from Rutgers. And then I have a second master's from Hunter College, a CUNY school in the New York City. Hunter College, it's a city college, University of New York school.
Oh, very cool.
So I spent a
Okay.
lot of time in school.
So I am a kind of a fan of Machiavelli and the Prince. I don't know, does that fall within that time period, or is that kind of...
I have read him, obviously. Um, I actually was studying much earlier than that. So
Okay.
my area of expertise at the time was the 6th century, and I was studying early monasticism in what is now France.
Gotcha. Okay, so that seems like a pretty hard pivot from that into data. How did that bridge happen?
It was a bit winding. So having effectively almost no real useful skills from a business standpoint, um, I took the first and only job I could get, which was in a 100% insurance and 100% commission insurance sales job. So I sold life insurance for almost 4 years, and did okay at it, but it wasn't intellectually challenging, as you could imagine.
Oh, I
Um,
know. That my first job out of college was selling door to door for Aflac.
you got to do what you got to do, right? But the key is to just keep moving forward, right?
Right.
So oddly, I read a book on how to use direct marketing to sell life insurance and life insurance products to your local community. And it was basically about direct mail, very soft selling direct mail. And I tried it and it worked, and it was shocking. I assumed direct mail was worthless, right? But it was
Oh
very
yeah.
helpful, and made some money out of it. And I used that to pivot into a job at a company called Gray Direct, which was a direct advertising agency. This is a while ago, so it's concentrating on direct mail. I think right around the time I got there, we started doing email. It was like the new big thing. And then that was, did that for a few years, didn't really like it, but, made some money. I mean, I don't want to say I didn't like it. It was just not thoughtful enough for me, right? Because I wasn't
Right.
an analyst. I was just I was a manager, basically, of projects, project manager,
Hmm.
effectively. I've been in the agency world quite a bit in my life. It just that wasn't the role I wanted. So I went to the library again. This is a while ago, and found the big jobs of the 21st century, and there was literally a paragraph on something called marketing analytics. A paragraph, literally a paragraph. This was the New York Public Library, and then I was like, hey, that sounds kind of interesting. I mean, I could do that. I know some math. I mean, I had calculus and all that stuff. So I checked out the 5 books, and there literally were 5 books in the entire public library system of New York at the time on direct and database marketing. One was, I think it was Alan Sheffield or something, like the new direct marketing, and it talked about using logistic regression models for targeting mail. And I had actually never written I'd never made a logistic regression model. I was not, had no experience. But I devoured those books. Like, I read them and reread them, and had brought my old calculus book out of the basement. So I had to relearn calculus and everything to understand, and linear algebra and all this stuff you have to know for this. And then I went on a bunch of job interviews, and I kept getting, let me get this straight. You want us to hire you because you're smart and have read 5 books. Like, that is the plan. I got a lot of no's. Um, but eventually I got a no. And then a few months later, the woman who said no is like, I hired a few people, they didn't work out. I don't think you're going to work, but are you willing to try? I'm like, sure, I'm in. I ended up working for her for like 10 years.
Oh wow.
And just my first week, I went to there was a thing called Learning Tree back then. I don't know if it still exists. We went to a week-long class to learn. It's my first week of school of working. I basically went to a week-long course to learn SQL, and that was the skill I had when I started.
Oh, very cool.
So
Well,
that's
I
how it
mean,
happened. It's kind of odd,
well,
but that's where it happened.
well, it seems like what you did was you developed kind of some business domain as marketing, and now what you're doing is you're building your technical skills.
Yeah. So I started with and I think it's interesting with the advent of AI. I think we're going to be going back to that. Um, I had understanding from history about human behavior, and through sales, I understand how that worked. The sales, and then
Oh
through
yeah,
Gray Direct, how that worked, and then I was able to use that to leverage. That was my foundation of knowledge, and I just overlaid some tech stuff over, increasingly over time.
gotcha. Very cool. Okay, so from that job, what happened next?
Um, okay, so it was company. I worked at this company for about 10 years, and during that time, I got a master's degree at night school. And if you've ever seen the continuum of complexity, value of analytics, I can't remember the things off the top of my head, but it's like ad hoc analytics, KPIs, dashboards, uh, predictive analytics, forecasting, whatever. Another way you can look at it is going from descriptive to what happened, diagnostic, why it happened, predictive, what will happen, prescriptive, what you should do
Right.
next. And my career has sort of followed that, by starting with SQL, adding. I pretended to be an Oracle DBA for a couple of years, because there was no one else to do it. And you do what you got to do. So I added database skills. I then did web analytics, and I learned how to do microstrategies. So I did the business intelligence for a few years, got my master's in stats, started building, good old-fashioned logistic regression models. Then entered ad tech, and that was amazing. Uh, there was an Israeli-based firm, and they don't know the word impossible, uh, and um, and just very quickly ramped up in terms of machine learning knowledge and some of the stuff there. That's where I got the few patents I have, and we did some amazing things there. And then that we had an exit. I wasn't a founder, but I was a relatively early employee. We got acquired by Nielsen, and I ran basically Nielsen's, if you will, machine learning center of excellence. And then my next stop was being general manager of basically all of analytics at Axiom.
Okay,
Um,
very cool.
so you just got to follow it's um, people ask me, how did that work? And I wish I remember. There's a wonderful commencement speech by a comedian in like Australia about the 10 things of how to you should keep in mind as a graduate. And one of them, and I don't do justice of it, is don't be so singly focused on what you're doing that you're not looking out the corners of your eyes,
Right.
because that next great thing might actually be over here, right? Not in front of you, but to the side. And you've got to be willing to go, wait, what's that? Oh, okay. Yeah, I could do that. I can learn how to do that. And obviously it's continuous learning and all that stuff. But sometimes you just gotta make a little bit of a turn because that's kind of cool over there.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like, if I were to sum this up, the key to a sustainable, healthy career is just there's some element of curiosity to it. You seem very curious.
Curiosity, it's certainly curiosity. I in some regards, I've never lost the curiosity of the little kid.
Yeah,
Things
yeah.
fascinate me, and I just love learning about everything. I love, my daughter is getting these weird, degrees in like biological anthropology, and so I just love learning about everything that she knows about neuroscience and everything. It's amazing. um and so it's certainly curiosity. It's I want to say it's the willingness to take chances.
Mhm.
um One of the jobs I took, which was really important, and ended up doing really well in for my career, is they had a mountain of data, but I was going to be the first data scientist, and we didn't know if there was anything there. It's like I
Right.
told my wife, like, I might not have a job if I take this. It could go really well, or I might not have a job in 6 months. But it sounds really cool, and we're like, go for it. So you kind of have to sometimes just be willing to kind of throw caution to the wind and just go in that cool direction. So curiosity, a little bit of bravery. I don't know, maybe bravery is not the right word. That's too strong. But a little bit of willingness to take chances. Um,
Maybe risk tolerance.
Risk tolerance. There we go. That's a better
Yeah.
word for it. Um, Certainly a lot of luck, and just I've always tried to be kind to people, and that has come back and benefited me throughout my career as well. So it's a lot of social
Right.
interaction as well.
Yeah, because I mean, there's that. It's a little bit corny, but the phrase "your network is your net worth" or something like that. I,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
don't. I
yeah,
don't
yeah.
really like that saying because you can know a lot of people. It doesn't mean that you're like able to turn that into money. But yeah, because and it's funny because we have very different. I went and started my own company, and now I'm kind of shifting back into the workforce. And it's, well, number one, it's so interesting. I feel like I live in this like little ivory tower as a category analyst because everyone else is like maintaining the business, all the data is like handled for me, and I just get to sit right here and just pour over. I'm the category analyst for the dairy department, so like I
Okay.
get to just learn that one piece of the business, and it's really really nice. But when I was running the agency, I felt like I was doing much more sales and marketing rather than actual analytics work. So now I almost feel like it's almost like a hobby. Like I studied economics in my undergrad, and then went off and mean, most of the consulting I was doing, like Power BI, Tableau,
Right.
like work for companies.
That's cool.
But now I'm getting to see like, okay, well, the port strike is happening on all of the East Coast. How is this going to affect a grocery chain that has 165 stores? So then we get to see like, all right, what's the risk? Okay, well, what we're gonna have to do is if it doesn't lighten up, we're gonna have to just like take a truckload through Mexico to get around that. Um, and it feels fun again. It's not
That's
like,
nice. That's
yeah,
good.
and it's funny because that's one thing that Solomon has kind of been preaching a little bit is your your career is not a sprint. It's like you've got to figure out how to make it kind of fun and enjoyable and sustainable. To where I don't know. I think early on in my career, I was just trying to like get as much money as I could, and just very very stressed out. Wasn't really enjoying the work that I was doing. To where now this feels like, oh, this is kind of nice. Like it almost feels like I'm back in school again. I'm getting to, or what school should be. Like you're actually learning
Hmm.
something. Because I mean, I just watched a podcast. It was some guy came on Lex Friedman's podcast, and he's like almost like a rebel economist, and said all of economic theory is wrong because that it starts off with all else held stable, and it's like, well, that's not how it works. So your first primary assumption is wrong. To where like when I get to adjust a price, I get to see, all right, how does that actually affect the amount of things are bought, or if we take this one product and put it on the end cap, what kind of effect does that have? And I guess within academia, it's kind of it's almost removed from consequences. Like you can just have a
Hmm.
theory, and if you're wrong, oh well. I mean, you're you know,
You're right. Yeah.
like, and I don't know. It's interesting to see, and this is a total tangent, but like, where is education heading? Because like it's so
Yeah.
expensive, and one of my like I mentor at my alma mater, and I think my students actually going to drop out that I'm mentoring because the quality of the online education is so bad. It's
Wow.
like they get these degrees, but it's almost like a check the box, busy work, and then you take the test and then you pass. Um, that just doesn't seem sustainable long term.
So you bring up a number of cool things there. One is the ongoing importance of domain knowledge. I mean,
Mhm.
that's always been important, and I think we can see if we agree with me on this. Is that as you got auto code, no code, and auto ML, and all this stuff, where while you still need the R and the Python, all that stuff, over time, the technical skills, the focus on that, I think, is going to decrease, and the focus on understanding the domain, whether it's the industry or the department, finance, product, whatever, is going to become ever more important. So that's I think that's absolutely true. And the other one, you've mentioned how you've kind of switched around a little bit in your career. I didn't. I want to say I was 32 when I got my first marketing analytics job,
Wow.
and well, because I was in academia for like, I don't know, 10, 12 years, I can't remember.
Yeah.
Um, and um, and again, in academia, doing something basically different. Um, and I've switched my career, even in the data science realm. I've gone from very back office to very front office to like, I'm in the back room. The joke, they open the door, throw the meat in, you throw a model out, and you're all
Yeah.
good. To being in very commercial roles where I'm doing a lot of business development. I'm developing go-to-market strategies, solution strategies, very front-end stuff, and I just kind of bounce around. And I'm not 32 anymore. Um, you 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 can keep changing your career a lot or a little for your entire life. You got
Mhm.
don't worry about being in a rut. I think the how you went from agency to this, I forget what you call it, the milk association, milk
Uh,
council or whatever it is. I mean,
Category
that's kind of
analyst.
what is it?
The category analyst role.
Yeah,
Yeah.
category analyst role. That's just really cool because now you kind of you're doing some of the same stuff, using some of the same skills, but it's a different job, and you shushed it, right?
Re- Yeah, I what it?
You switched from one to the other.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
were
yeah.
willing to make the switch.
Right, but what's cool is that I have all these mental models because like what I was doing was I in my consulting agency I was working with presidents, CEOs, CMOs, COOs of smaller
Right.
organizations, and I got to see how they think about the problems that they're solving. Um, and then I've got basically just kind of like a laundry list of this is how I've seen a C-suite executive approach marketing a new product or expanding to different facilities. Like that's kind of more on the inventory and the distribution and supply chain side. But like one of the consulting engagements I worked on, they were selling products all across the East Coast, and then they were trying to figure out should we open up a new manufacturing plant, and then they brought me in to do some sales analysis around like, all right, if we do some geo bands, like can we figure out like what's the furthest we could ship? And it turns out that like a third of the products that they were shipping had no margin or even in some cases negative margin. So it's like,
Okay.
all right,
Yep.
if you're going to open it up, bam, right there. But yeah, but it's almost like more critical thinking or problem solving.
Well, that stuff you always bring with you
Right.
as you develop it. I think you never lose that. It's just the ability to go from one type of activity to another where you bring those skills with you, the willingness and openness and enjoy. In fact, the way you were describing it, the excitement about having a
Right.
slightly different shift where you're able to do something new.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess it's like what do you value? Like some people want um, a job where it's like at 9 a.m. I do this, at 10 a.m. I do this, and it's the same thing over and over, and they want to do that for 30 years because their value structures. I want security, I want stability. It sounds like with you, your novelty is kind of important to you, and like learning and expanding. But the downside of that is that there's risk involved with that. You might learn that hey, there's actually nothing here, and I've got to go find another job, or oh no, I'm going to get laid off or something like that.
Fortunately, we are in fields that still are
Yeah.
very, very sought after. So, once you get the basic skills and basic, expertise down, I think it's very transferable. And I've never had a problem moving to the next thing. But you're right. I mean, some people aren't looking for that, but I think I might actually go so far as to argue that I mean, we're subject matter experts, we're knowledge workers, right?
Right.
And we are, I don't know if you share this, but I myself, if professionally, my biggest fear has been to not keep up. And so, keep up because the what you need to know is changing every day, and the pace of change is speeding up, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's a lot more risk in our field of staying in that 9 to 5 job where you're doing the same thing over and over again, because that job could get automated right out
Right.
of existence.
Mm-hmm.
So instead, as opposed to constantly keeping up, constantly learning the new thing, constantly figuring out what's tomorrow is going to bring and trying to get ahead of that, I actually would argue that's probably less risky than the 9 to 5.
Yeah, that's true. Well, the it feels like you and I have been in swimming in kind of different ponds. In that, usually when I would come into a company like as a consultant, Power BI would be like space age technology to them. To where at Nielsen, like they're right on the cutting edge. So like just to stay afloat there, you've got to be on top of the trends. So I think that I I wouldn't necessarily say like getting behind is one of my fears. I'm trying to think of like what I worry. I'm not very stressed right now.
That's good.
Well, but part of it is like, and so you said that you and Solomon are LinkedIn friends. So
Yep.
it's kind of weird being in the position that I'm in because I have 15 courses published on LinkedIn Learning. So I
Right.
have like 15, 20,000 students take my courses a month, and I'm making almost as much passively as I am working full time. So I'm in like
Right.
a really comfortable position. But kind of talking to Solomon a little bit, he cautions, kind of the other people against becoming like LinkedIn famous, or because it's kind of a risk to your career if you're doing really well, you have something that's trending, and then your company's not doing well. They're like, well, why aren't you working on our product or giving us the attention? Why are you being self-indulgent and just focusing on like your reach?
Right. Yeah, I've never really had a side gig.
Yeah.
And I also think the whole concept of a side job is somewhat more recent than, say, someone of my, shall we say, experience level.
Well, it's funny because he actually, I don't know if you saw the post recently, he posted and said the average side gig makes, I don't know, $834 a month.
Oh, did he? Okay.
Yeah. And it's like, okay, are you going to risk, instead of spending all that time and energy, because it takes, going from 0 to 1 with a company is a huge amount of like
Right.
inertia that you have to get past. If you were to just invest that into your career and work harder at your job, maybe networking or, spending that energy nurturing your career, that you would probably get a better return long term.
Um, yeah, I'm definitely not I don't have that experience per se.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I've always been, um, while I switch, and I've switched significantly in my life, what I am doing, and I've always kept my, eyes out for what's over there.
Mm-hmm.
When I'm doing something, I tend to be all in on it.
Right.
It is, professionally, that is what I am doing right now. And I'm going to concentrate on making that the best I can. And, will I move to something else at some point and concentrating on that? Um, yes. But while I'm doing something, that's my, I don't want to say my whole life because I
Yeah. No,
other
but
things going on. But but
but
but
you
I
could
don't.
you could say it's your professional life though.
Yeah, it's my professional life. I don't want to. I don't. I've had, and I'm not saying this is the only way to do it. I'm sure it's not. But I've had more. The success that I've had has come from just being fully dialed into what I'm doing
Right.
professionally right then and right there. And for me anyway, I'd rather be really good at one thing I'm doing than
Mm-hmm.
not so then less good at two or three things. And some people, that's just me. I'm sure there are people that can do three fundamentally different things exceptionally well. I can't. At least
Right.
I
Well,
haven't tried.
because Solomon's been telling me that's kind of my biggest liability is I need to like almost over communicate how committed I am to the job, because I'm teaching, I'm running the podcast, I'm involved in other side projects, actually including this AI thing,
Right.
and I think I've self corrected to where like I appear to my manager a lot more focused because I am curious about a wide swath of things, but like when I have my weekly one on one with him, it needs to be focused on the business and this like the specifics, and then maybe last 5 minutes of the call we can say like, oh, you know, I'm only 3 months into this new role, so it's like still pretty new, but like I found out that they have AI in their marketing department, and I was like very curious about that, and he was like, just focus on dairy, don't focus on like all these other things. But yeah, maybe it's just like a personality type because one thing that I've done since I've been in this company, we started an internal analytics meetup on a weekly basis.
Yeah.
So I'm getting, which I think there's utility to it. I get to understand, what are the problems with operations, what are the problems with HR, with marketing, so that I get kind of more of a holistic view of what's going on. But I guess if it's a massive company, there's just no way you could kind of get a feel on that.
Yeah. And I think it might be personality. I'm sure it is to an extent. I think it's also generational.
Hmm.
So when I was getting my master's degree, and that was in the early 2000s, I was probably working, no, I was definitely working at least 80 hours every week and getting a master's degree.
Oh wow.
And I was married. I had a child. I kind of missed the first 4 years of her life. Um, and that's I think that's I think that's generational. I'm no expert on this, but in my day, as it were,
Yeah.
and the way you got ahead is you did the work of two, and
Yeah.
and and you would get rewarded for that, or at least I got rewarded for that. People
Right.
say, when we talk about what, if to the extent that I've had success in my life, a lot of it is hard work. I was willing to, if it meant, I mean, I remember one time I really, I didn't almost get fired for it. That's too strong, but I got reprimanded because I brought down a client data store at like 2 a.m. on Friday night because I was still working on it. And I was so tired, I did something kind of stupid. And my
Yeah.
boss was like, stop being upset with him. It was 2 a.m. on Friday. And then there was a time when I got a poor data set. I knew I was going to go visit my in-laws with my wife, and I worked really hard to get the project done right before I left. And the day before I left, I was told that the data set I was given by the client was completely wrong, but it was still due the day after I got back from that vacation with my in-laws. I didn't see my
Yeah.
in-laws. I went to visit my in-laws, but I worked, nonstop. And the in-laws were a little, not as
Right.
pleased as why is my son-in-law not talking to us? Well, he's busy, Dad. He's working. Um, that's just how that is part. That was a huge portion of my success. That's why I think I've had the success I've had to the extent I've had.
Yeah. It's funny because I think it's within. I'm a millennial. I think that it's almost like a frat. Like the entrepreneurs that I've like kind of spent the time with the last 10 years, they do have that hustle culture. But then there's kind of like this pushback against that of like, no, this job doesn't define me, and blah blah blah. Like there's, and then I mean this is kind of a tangent as well, but like I've heard Gen Z is having a really hard time acclimating to
Mhm.
the workforce because there's like a pretty big disconnect because I don't think they're not as bought in as
Mhm.
like into the whole concept of like and with good reason because I think that a lot of the American dreams that they were sold or I guess historically young people were sold it just is unattainable right now.
Yeah, the my brother worked for the same company for 45 years, maybe 40 years. Um, and he's a little older than me even. Uh, that doesn't happen very much anymore.
No.
And so the it's important. I don't think well, it's very important for individuals to concentrate on building their careers and building their
Right.
brands and
Right.
and 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 I've often told people, I've never had a problem when people that report into me find a better job and and move on. I wish them the best luck. I'm happy to help them in their careers. Um, but what I don't like is when they leave for a job that I know that they're not gonna learn. They're gonna stop learning. It's a job that's kind of a dead
Mm,
end intellectually. So
yeah.
for me, and I also give an advice to people: don't leave your current job. This might sound weird, but it worked for me. Don't worry about the how much money you're getting paid right then and there. As long as you keep learning, and the more hours you work, the more you're going to learn. As long as you keep learning, the money and the career success will come. And so
Right.
that's and so that's um so I don't know if the jobs defined me so much as throughout this entire way I was playing catch up again. I got into this when I was 32, so I had to learn it really quick because I had years to make up, as it were. At least that's how I felt. Um, but I also knew that every hour that I was doing on this, I was learning more and more skills and being better at my job, and that would stay with me forever.
Right. Yeah, I'm finding myself kind of in that situation where this almost feels like my undergrad in economics 2.0, where it's like I'm taking the concepts I learned and then I'm getting to apply them in the real world. So
Yep.
like that's great because now I'm getting to have these conversations about what's going on within the business, what's going on within the business climate. And it's, yeah, I find it very, very stimulating. And it's funny because I was very afraid of, because early on I had two internships where I had bad managers and I
Okay.
just got like a really bad start to so much so that I was like, I'm not going to work for anyone else. I'm going to start my own consulting agency, which is a pretty bold thing to
Right.
do when you're 26, have no real data experience, but an MBA with a concentration in analytics. And then, but that's where the sales come in. So it's like,
Right.
if you can bring that with you, the skills and the lessons that you're paid to learn, yeah, I like that. I like that frame as opposed to like, you're just slaving away for the man, and it's a hard time
Yeah.
getting out of bed.
Right. Right.
It's a
I don't.
different energy.
It is a different. I was slaving away to learn as much as I could, as quickly as I could, and every
Right.
extra hour I worked, I learned more.
Right.
And combined with the willingness to say, I've never done that before. I'll figure it out. And that I think everybody can do that. I mean, I really, I mean, if you're willing to put the time in, you can be put in a brand new role that is like, I haven't really done this before. Now for me, that's exciting and I love it. I mean,
Yeah.
that's what some people are like, oh, no, maybe not so much, but as long as you are, I feel as long as you're constantly working hard to train yourself better and better, taking on new challenges, learning new skills, you'll be okay.
Okay. So one thing I did want to circle back around is that you were saying that we're knowledge workers, and it's pretty easy, if something doesn't work out, to get back on your job. Literally 3 hours ago, one of my former students reached out to me saying 80% of my team got laid off. What would be your advice to him? Like I tried to get him on. He didn't see my message to come on the podcast, but he's actually been on the podcast. So if you guys are listening, so Justin is back on the job market, so he's looking. But I'd love to get like, how would you approach that?
Welcome to the club. I mean, I've been laid off before. It, there's the idea that people talk about make yourself, um, whatever, invaluable,
Right,
um, and do it, and you'll be fine. Or if you're a great employee, you will never lose your job. It doesn't work that way.
right,
When companies are downsizing because of something, especially as a more junior employee that is largely, if not completely beyond your control, um, even if you're really, really good, you could still end up losing your job. Um, the times that this has happened to me, I've always ended up with a better job that I've liked more, that paid more money with a better title. So don't. And the very first time it happens, you can get some serious soul searching. I remember I was young; it was tough, um, and um, and it's one of those things you can be told, "Don't let it get to you," but it's still hard to not let it
yeah,
get to you. You almost have to go through it once to say, "Wow, I survived that."
hmm
But it happens a lot. Um, if you have the skills, if you've been working hard, if you've been developing yourself, your toolkit, growing intellectually, growing, in every way what people can grow, you'll be fine. You're going to land somewhere. I promise you. I've encountered this a lot with people, who used to work for me. I'm like, don't worry, it'll be all right. Just you gotta know that this is going to end up well. It always has for
Yeah,
me, and it has for everybody that I know. But you can't be passive about it, right? And
right,
not, it's not gonna, it's not gonna, it's not gonna solve itself for you. You're gonna have to solve it. You're gonna have to take charge of this. And, it's kind of hard. A lot of data scientists are, not the most extroverted people in the world,
right.
but the networking, even in this field, it's all, how it's, um, one of the most amazing books I ever read in my life, and that's how I moved from, part of the reason I got my job at Greater Eck was this book called "What Color Is Your Parachute," and it was
I've heard
all
of that.
about. It's like in probably edition number 800
Yeah,
by now. I mean, whatever, probably like 30 or something. And it was all about what are your skills, what are your interests, what are you going to do next. But most importantly, it was like the first book, to my knowledge. Let's say, I mean, I was reading this in the 90s. So it was really early on about networking. And it's just you talk to somebody and you ask them what they do and what they like, what they don't like. And then you say, can I talk to two other people? Introduce me to two or three people. They introduce you to two or three people. It was amazing. When I first did this and when I landed the job at Great Direct, I literally had no experience at all in the advertising world. And I was literally talking to creative directors of large agencies just because I followed the networking chain and
yeah,
and just and you can't, like, you have to be careful. There's all these rules, and not rules. There's ethics to it, I guess. You can't go give me a job. I mean, that's not you're no one's going to give you
right.
the next recommendation. You have to, say 15 minutes, won't be any more. I'm just going to ask you some questions. Thank you so much. You ask the questions, you ask the role, you move on. Um, and it's hard. It's still hard, but that's the way. That's
Right.
the way to get the job. That's the way you take. Was it agency? I don't know what the right word is. That's how you take control of this situation and you turn it into something better. So
Right.
it's hard, and I know it really is, but you just got to keep at it.
Well, yeah, I mean, literally, that's what this podcast is. Like I'm getting it's interesting because to that point, yeah, the intuition of like going to I don't know if they even have these networking events, but it used to be like, here's my card, and then it's like how can you help me? To where one other thing, and this kind of gets into like this concept of social capital is you can kind of position yourself as a vector force. So like it's well known that established in the analytics space. So like I have companies reaching out to me, then I can connect with students, and I've helped, I don't know, a handful of students get jobs. But yeah, I'm not going to these companies and trying to ask. It's like you kind of provide value first, and it's almost like you build up this social capital that you can eventually tap into. But it's funny because there's also a liability with social capital too, because if I were to refer to someone for a job and it didn't work out, that actually hurts that
For sure.
invisible bank account of social capital goes down. But yeah, there's an art to it, and I wouldn't even say you have to necessarily be extroverted, because what you can do is you can be a little bit crafty with it. I mean, this podcast is a great example. It gives me a reason to reach out to people like you. And then it's also like on the surface of it, it's like kind of flattering of someone reaching out to you and say, "Hey, I really respect and admire what you're doing. Tell me about it." Which
Yeah.
that's kind of nice into itself. But then it's like I've helped some of the people who've come on the podcast level up their career or refer them to someone else. And yeah, you build up those. It's not about just knowing people, but also like when they think of you, what is the feeling that they have? Is it a good feeling, or is it kind of like this guy's a little sketchy, or he's needy. He just wants the only time he talks to me is when he needs something. You
Yep.
don't want to be that person. But
Yeah. So so it yeah, there's a lot there and a lot I agree with. And so and the social network thing, sort of the social what
capital.
is it, contract, I guess,
Oh
thing,
yeah.
it applies also to the whole, as you said, the whole networking. Like, if I'm going to ask you to help me now, 2 years from now, if you're going to ask me, I got to help you back because not first of all, I would want to. I mean,
Right,
I
right,
get most people get pleasure out of helping other people, right? But let's say you don't, you still have to because it's not going to be good for you. This won't work. This won't keep working for you if you don't give as much as you get, right? You know,
right.
and if you actually enjoy just helping people and stuff, then it makes it even more enjoyable. I actually like it. Um, the other one is I would say you the whole thing about like you only talk to people you when you need them.
Yeah,
Um, that's true to an extent, but you were talking about like you build up your that social I forget what
capital.
the word
Yeah,
capital when you're if you've worked with these people in the past and you were be friendly and helpful to them and you know collegial to them, you it's all right if you haven't talked to them for 3 or 4 years because they're
right.
still going to go, yeah, you know, when we worked together, he or she or whatever
Yeah,
was a great person and I liked working with them and they helped me back then when I needed some. So I don't care that he hasn't talked to me for 4 years. I'm happy to help him. So it's not just in the how often you talk; it's when you interact that you
right.
add to that social capital, if that makes sense. Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
yeah. Because it's not like you need to have a calendar of like, okay, I'm going to talk to this person every 6 months, and then you schedule like an automated message out to them. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
not like robotic like that. It's yeah, because I mean, it gets to that point where it's you have so many people that you've interacted with that
It's hard.
it's
Yeah.
hard to manage all of those. But all right, so we need to root back to AI. So
Okay, sorry.
the whole topic of the podcast episode was how is AI going to affect the roles within the analytics space?
All right. Yeah, so that's interesting. Yeah, so that's what we're talking about today. Okay,
Yeah,
excellent. Um, so what are some of the things on top of my mind? It's kind of a new topic, even though it's the original topic. So I think first things is you know the no code, the auto ML, the AI, those are all going to have profound impacts. I think both on um, what we do as data scientists, what is valued for data scientists, and also what's how you need to present yourself for getting that entry level job. I think that's going to be key too. So and frankly, you could almost argue that there might in time be reduced number of entry level jobs with automation and whatnot. You
hmm,
know, if the basic stuff is getting automated,
right.
then you're going to have to figure out a different way to break into it. Um, all right, so there's in no particular order. Certainly, there's going to be automation, right? And how is that going to affect it? Well, the day-to-day tasks are going to become the sort of the manual, tedious tasks are going to become less likely. I think they're going to be less common. Um, the idea that you know, like I don't know if this still holds, but it's like you know, 80% of the time of any data science project is actually prepping the data. And like if you're still in a world of batch, and a lot of companies still are in the world of batch, you might be manually prepping the data to make it ready for
Hmm.
make it ready for the analysis. I think that stuff like data cleansing, data feature engineering, that's going to become automated. So that's one. So that part of your job, our jobs, I think, are going to be reduced. Next, you've got. I think soft skills are going to be more important than they ever have been. Um, First off, I when people say ask me even when you know throughout my entire life, what is the number one most important job, most important skill for a data scientist? It's always been problem solving. That is the most important skill. Um, and honestly, I think that's what separates the good data scientists from the great data scientists, the ability to solve problems. Um, the great data scientists are the ones, especially as like a manager, where you can say, here's a data set, here's a problem, find a solution. Tell me when you're done. And you know, you need all the tech skills for that, right? But you
Hmm.
just need to be able to think. You need to be able to just go, I've got nothing, I've got this problem, and I've got data. What do I do to solve it? and the like I said, the best ones are there. And I think as auto ML and all these other things become increasingly prevalent, I think that problem solving aspect is going to become even more important to the point where, I don't know, eventually maybe that is the prime, that's the only thing we're doing, right? And everything else is
Mhm.
automated. What else we got? It's going to create new roles in AI ethics, um, prompt engineering. Didn't
Right.
exist. I probably didn't. I don't. I got it. Probably me. I don't think. I certainly didn't. I don't think I heard that term before November 22. Right.
Right. Yeah.
Right. I mean,
It's been like two
it's like,
years. Yeah.
XO prompt engineers. Okay, there's a new one. Um, uh, I think. I think it's gonna increase. I'm just rattling off here. If
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
want to
Fine.
get into any of these, now, I think it's. I think it's gonna increase the ability for business users to directly access, let's say, answers. I
Mhm.
mean, data. Um, Not just data, because they don't really want to access data. They want to access insights, or they want to access
Right.
answers. I think the role of, intermediary there, that has been very common. Is like, business user has a question, goes to data scientist, data science queries data science gets answer back, data science gives it to business user. I think that's going to become less and less likely. Um, and Yeah, so I guess that's I can start with that. We can then talk about, like, how I think it's going to change. Yeah, I think then we can talk about, like, the skills and stuff, or like what you need. We can sorry, what we after you can ask me questions if you want, but then I think we can also talk about, like, how this changes the role of, like, trying to get a job.
Yeah. So what was interesting is that I don't know Python, but 3 or 4 podcast episodes ago, we actually had someone who's getting a PhD in machine learning at
Yep.
Georgia Tech, and apparently ChatGPT, like, because one thing that is relevant for me is the price elasticity model. And within an hour and a half from scratch, we used ChatGPT to like build it out, and it wrote out all the code,
Right.
which is fascinating to me. And it's more of like, I mean, I could just pay him an hourly rate to be like, hey, help me with the kind of the workings behind this, and help me learn how to use ChatGPT to write this out. Um,
Right.
it's incredible. I mean, it's completely game changing.
So yes and no. So I actually, yeah, just 2 weeks ago, I did an experiment on this. Um, I actually wanted to see what Chat GPT could do
Mhm.
with minimal input in terms of developing a data science project. And what I wanted, I picked customer segmentation. And, I purposely didn't feed it the prompts. I said, because to feed it the proper prompts, you actually kind of need to know the steps
Right.
of a customer segmentation project. I didn't want to say, okay, let's do feature, gather the data, blah blah blah. So I didn't want to feed it the step by step. I said, I basically started with, I want to do a customer segmentation project, write the code for that.
Mhm.
And it basically wrote, like, a few lines for k-means, which is a common way of doing customer segmentation. And it, like, I'm like, okay, and so I had to go backwards, like, okay, but what about, and I can't remember the exact way, but, like, how might I prepare the data? Oh, well, you need to normalize the data. Okay, fine. Yeah, scale it, get everything on the same scale, which is good. But I was like, is there anything else I could do? Like what? Well, okay, how about log? What would happen if I took the log of everything? And then it's like, oh yeah, you could do that too, and that's how they write the code for that. And so I kept having to feed it the process. It didn't do feature engineering very well. It didn't do visualization very well. It didn't do validation very well. It basically just, to do a customer segmentation, here's the 4 lines of code. It,
Right.
and it could be terrible because it doesn't
Mhm.
have everything all around it. So while I successfully, or I guess Chat GPT successfully wrote, I didn't write a single line of code. I didn't write a sentence, character of code, and that was cool. But I still had, it was almost like if I didn't know how to do a customer segmentation model and I wasn't able to go, no, you're missing that, no, you're missing
Mhm.
that, no, you're missing that, it wouldn't have been very good. But this is a perfect example of like where the domain knowledge is, and I assume this is, they're all going to get better and better at this. But right now you still need to know how to do things,
Mhm.
even if ChatGPT can then write the code of what you tell it how to do.
Right. Yeah. Because I mean, I understand price elasticity. Like I can understand the steps involved in that. Like if I increase the price, like top offhand, maybe we have an assumption of like any percentage up, you increase the price, the demand drops by the same price. Like
Yeah.
just over. So that yeah, that's interesting though. So it's like you're saying I should go in and maybe study price elasticity and like how other people approach it.
Yeah, well, before you do I'm just saying if you might end up with something really not very good if you don't know how
Right.
to do price elasticity studies by just going to ChatGPT and say, give me the code for a price elasticity study in Python.
Gotcha.
Because the stuff you get, it's going to be pretty rudimentary.
Gotcha.
So
Okay.
you still need to know my experience was, and my experience was you still need to know how the steps
Right.
of a proper customer segmentation model, developing a proper segmentation. You can once you feed it the steps, it can give you the code. The code worked perfect. I mean, if there were a few things that didn't work and you had to go back and forth, like that didn't work.
Right.
Um, but the steps that it gave back to me specifically because I wasn't prompting it very well. I mean, that was kind of the experiment. If I
Yeah.
don't know what I'm doing, what will I get back? And I didn't get back enough without having to constantly say, "No, you got to do this too."
Right. Because my understanding of ChatGPT, it's really good with like problems that have documentation. So it can go in and say, here's how Python syntax works, and it can go in and write that out. But the you know customer segmentation sounds like a pretty complex problem. So and there's like some
A lot of
judgment and
steps.
there's some like ambiguity there, and then it doesn't quite have that wisdom. But and it's interesting because the implications of that is, I think education should embrace AI instead of like
Oh yeah,
writing these papers. Like you should instead of saying like no chat gpt or whatever, you should actually it should be you got to figure out how to use it correctly. Like prompt they should be focusing on prompt engineering, because just regurgitating things back, that's antiquated. It's almost like a typewriter, like it's
exactly.
just it's an antiquated way of thinking. And I don't know, I mean, I saw the was it when Zuckerberg had to go in and testify at Congress, and they had no idea what's going on. But
Yeah. Well,
all right, well, Kevin, I appreciate your time. We're coming up at 7 o'clock. I guess let's end the podcast on, so how how can people go about developing these skills and making themselves more competitive as far as getting their first job, or in the case of Justin, if they got laid off, like you know
right. All
becoming
right.
more
So
resilient.
so I think I mean, right now you still have if you're applying say for an entry level job in data science, I think you still need to have you still need some tools in your toolbox, R, Python, whatever. Um, but I think it's important that your resume stress all the other things you bring to the table beyond just the technology. I think you need to talk about what maybe hybrid skills you have or domain knowledge that you have.
Hmm.
And it doesn't matter where the domain knowledge comes from. Um, my daughter does not have a degree in infectious diseases, but she loves podcasts on infectious diseases. It's fascinating. She's been listening to them for years. And like just the other day, I asked her about the bubonic plague. She's like, well, actually, there's three form. She went on for like 20 minutes about,
Wow.
like, oh, okay. She doesn't have a degree in it. I don't think I mean, but she's done these podcasts for so long that she just knows it really well.
Right.
And she's interested. So be creative about where your hybrid skills might be coming from. When you're,
Hmm.
I know about X, and it doesn't have to be from school. It can be from, any number of places. So don't just do this tech skills. Two, um, make certain that your resume shows your ability to solve problems. And by that, I mean, I gave the example, the difference between a good and a great data scientist. You give them a data set, give them a data set, and a problem, and they solve it. So if you can have on your resume, I was given a problem, and it's not going to be some high, we're talking about college students. It's going to be, shall we say, a contained project, but that's fine. But if you can include on your resume an example, or two, whatever, of where you solved a problem, that's going to go a long way. I think
Hmm.
that's really important. What else we got? Ideally, I mean, and there's this can be, very quick, or it can be very in depth, but make sure you have some knowledge and that you express that knowledge on your resume about all these Gen AI tools, and the automation, the auto ML, and no code. I mean, spend a week on, AWS or Azure or GCP or whatever, uh, playing with AutoML. And just, even if you're not, I mean, the cool thing about it is they're kind of designed so you don't have to be an expert in it, quote unquote, but
Hmm.
just so you know how they work and are exposed to them and can talk to them for 5 to 10 minutes, that would be really important. We already talked about the networking. I don't know, off the top of my head, those are the ones that I can think of.
Awesome. Well, Kevin, this has been a fantastic episode. You've got a really interesting perspective on all this stuff. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
All right. See ya.
Bye bye.
Bye.